Oh, that's loud. Alright, I think I got my music fixed. Yeah, I think so. Alright. Gonna make an announcement to Facebook here. My goodness, I'm having problems on Facebook. Because I wasn't spelling a word right and it was ridiculous. Alright, just about ready. Alright. Oh, excuse me. A little too much. Alright, so, yeah. Welcome to World of Writecraft, the Presage. We're writing the story, the Presage. Let's see, go back to where we left off. We'll reread the last scene that I was working on, edit it, and then get to working on it. Actually, let's see. Let's look at the information I was trying to get put into the scene. Walks to the room, I think he does all that. There are gods, who are the fates. They maintain the cohesiveness of the weave. Phil will talk about the gods, no specific gods. They are real, gods may exist, don't really know. It's been a while since they have walked the earth. Presage will be mentioned and explained. It is a person that ignites the start of prophecies. Chris will mention a child in Freiburg. Chris will know more about Freiburg as he talks about it. There'll be innate knowledge he didn't know. Freiburg is the biggest city nearest to Black Forest in Germany. He has a very strong urge to go there, and then they leave. I think I got to the point where that scene was just about done with, but hadn't been finished. So we'll go back, edit it, and see about finishing it. Long scene, which is fine. I think I would have made the scene shorter if I were writing a short story and the short story was not having the specific aim of codifying my world lore. Because a lot of lore in this scene. Philip and Draven were sitting quietly in their chairs on either side of the fire. They were shaken out of their own thoughts as Chris walked into the room. Chris looked at the men sitting quietly in their respective chairs as they looked up at him, waiting for him to speak. Chris wasn't sure what he had just experienced, and he wasn't sure where to start. All he knew was that he had a nearly overwhelming urge to go east. He did his best to resist the urge as he walked over to the couch. Philip and Draven said nothing as he sat down. Chris waited a moment, his elbows on his knees, as he looked down at the carpet, gathering his thoughts. Where do I start? I have no idea what happened to me. He moved his eyes to glance up at the other two, quietly looking at him. They must know something. Draven I would trust to tell me the truth, that is, if he chooses to say anything at all. Then there was Philip. He couldn't help but have a grimace spread across his face for a few seconds as Philip entered his thoughts. I don't trust him to tell the truth. Maybe to a point, but he's likely to obfuscate the truth as he is to illuminate the truth. He's as likely to... Okay, I said it wrong, but it is written correctly. What other choice do I have? I need to know what they know. Chris sighed as he straightened up. He decided to find out some truths about his situation before he told his own tale of the events. How long has it been? It was Draven who answered. About an hour. Chris was surprised, but he didn't let it show on his face. He had been certain it was longer than an hour. But with what had happened, he wasn't sure about anything anymore. What did you want me to go in there? Why did you want me to go in there? What did you think would happen? It was Philip who chose to speak. I wasn't sure. When you were unconscious before, you looked like you were in the sleep. It was the only explanation, and even that made no sense. I've never heard of anyone being forced into that state. I'm not sure this state should be capitalized. Chris interrupted. The sleep? What is that? Philip paused and looked over at Draven. He is yours. Draven shrugged. I saw no reason to tell him. He is too young to need to know. Continue. You may be the one to explain it. I'm not sure if I'm happy with that, but it was fine, I guess. Philip continued, the sleep is a state that a vampire can reach when he is unconscious and no longer needs blood to survive. A vampire in the sleep can continue in this state for weeks, months, decades, and even centuries in some cases. Each vampire uses it for their own means, and their subconscious expresses it a little differently for each vampire. The concept of time goes out the window. Some use it to explore their own consciousness. Should be unconsciousness. Oh no! I forgot to turn that off. A vampire can learn a lot and strengthen themselves by using the sleep. Some just use it as a means to hop through time, while others use it to hide. There are risks that mainly... Let's see. Some just use it as a means to hop through time, while some others use it to hide, or even gain power. Alright, let's see how that sounds. Some just use it as a means to hop through time, while others use it to hop or even gain inner strength or power. Use it to hide or even gain inner strength or power. Inner insight or power. Okay. Let me read that correctly. Some just use it as a means to hop through time, while some others use it to hide or even gain inner insight or power. I'm going to say power or inner insight because it sounds better, I think. There are risks, mainly that you are not aware of your surroundings, and if care is not taken, you are at your weakest. Going into the sleep is a No, I said that kind of strangely. It implies that you can make yourself stronger when you can't. You are at your weakest no matter what you do. Let me see, There are risks, mainly that you are not aware of your surroundings. If care is not taken, you are at your weakest. You're most vulnerable. That fixes it. And if care is not taken, you're at your most vulnerable. Damn. Damn. Did it. Thanks for the alert, Grumpiest Gus. I should put in an alert command. It's difficult to enter. Alright, it takes time to learn, and you need a certain mastery over your body that younger vampires lack. Payakama, yep. Chris raised an eyebrow. If only an elder vampire can enter this state, why did you have me try it? Philip sighed, slightly agitated, but he continued. As I said, you looked like you were in the sleep. It only made sense that you try and enter the state naturally. I didn't know if it was going to work, but I figured it was worth a try. Was I right? Chris wanted to learn more about the sleep, but Chris, as much as he hated to admit it, realized Philip was probably right. He needed to move on from this topic. The topic. I don't know if I entered the sleep, but something happened. I was in a deep state of meditation, like I had been before, but this time I did all I could to slow down my heart, to make my body still, as if I were truly dead. Then, after what seemed like an eternity, I felt like I separated from my body, and I realized that I felt unconscious on the ground. Then there was nothing. After what seemed like an age, I was suddenly somewhere else, some sort of empty void, yet I was on solid ground. I could move, yet I could not. Movement meant nothing because there was no markers to indicate anything changed. Both Philip and Draven looked slightly taken aback. Draven looked over at Philip. Did he do it? Wait, no, that's not what he said. He did it? Philip grinned slightly as he spoke. I think he did. This is amazing. I knew he was special. I was right to keep my eye on him. Draven nodded slightly in agreement. It is true, he is special, but I've never heard of anyone so young. Only 30 years. The youngest I've heard of someone going to sleep was when they were at least 2 centuries old. And even then, once they truly go into the sleep, it usually takes so much longer till they are able to voluntarily exit a true sleep state. Oh my god, that is a huge sentence. I'm going to fix that. That is almost a paragraph. And the youngest I've heard of someone going to sleep was when they were at least 2 centuries old. Period. Even then, once they were truly into the sleep, it usually takes so much longer till they are able to voluntarily exit a true sleep state. Yeah, I guess it's better. Let's read it again, see if I don't run out of the air. The youngest I've heard of someone going into the sleep was when they were at least 2 centuries old. Even then, once they truly go into the sleep, it usually takes them much longer till they are able to voluntarily exit a true sleep state. They usually need help to awaken this quickly. It's hard to believe. They usually need help to awaken this quickly. It's hard to believe he's already mastered those 2 things. Philip nodded. It is, but it seems to be the case here. After all my years, to see something new like this. I never thought. Chris cleared his throat. May I continue? Chris wasn't sure how to handle this new information. He knew something about excelling. He was single-minded in his pursuit of martial excellence when he was immortal. He was single-minded in his pursuit of martial excellence when he was a mortal. And was used to being unique in that way. When he became a vampire, he was told that he was able to handle his darker impulses better than other vampires his age. But he always assumed that it had something to do with Philip and how he helped him train as a mortal. That was a really long sentence too. Let me see if I can fix that. When he became a vampire, he was told that he was able to handle his darker impulses much better than other vampires his age. He always assumed... Yeah, alright, that's better. He always assumed that it had something to do with Philip and how he helped train him as a mortal. He had the unique experience of being raised to become a vampire even though it was without his knowledge. He always assumed that this is what led him to excel as a vampire. Now he began to realize that maybe might be some force unknown to him that was influencing his life, in ways he never could have imagined, more than just being a vampire. Draven never talked about his reasons for wanting Chris to become a vampire, other than saying he seemed special. He sensed something special in him as an immortal. He knew it was pointless to push Draven to tell him more. Draven kept his promise to him. Chris never caught him lying. Draven always told him the truth, but there were more than a few times that he just blatantly ignored a subject. Oh my goodness, if I can't read it that well. Let me redo that sentence. Draven kept his promise to... Draven kept his promise. Chris never caught him lying. Draven always told him the truth, but there were more than a few times that he just blatantly ignored a subject. Much better. It was annoying, but he had to make a choice between who would turn him, Draven or Philip, and Philip had spent his whole life lying to him. When the time came, he chose Draven, and he's never regretted it. Though this was the first time he thought that he might get some answers. You know, I say lying a lot. Let me think about this last sentence here. I'm going to say hiding the truth from him. It was annoying, but he had to make a choice between who would turn him, Draven or Philip, and Philip had spent his whole life hiding the truth from him. When the time came, he chose Draven, and he's never regretted it, though this was the first time he thought he might get some answers. Philip and Draven both stopped looking at each other and turned back to Christopher, who they seemed to have momentarily forgot was there, despite the conversation being about him. It was Philip who spoke. He sounded a little surprised. There was more. You weren't in there long. I suspect you may have had a confusing experience. Maybe your own thoughts manifested in some way. It's hard to imagine it was coherent your first time, especially for such a short time. Chris had no trouble admitting to himself that he had a confusing experience, but he thought it seemed coherent, didn't it? For once, he decided he might know something that Philip didn't. His desire to keep a secret from Philip was overridden by his desire to get answers. If he was going to get any, he figured it would be from one of these two. Chris continued, yes, there was more. 3, what looked like self-contained mist creatures found me and spoke to me. Apparently, they had been looking for me for some time. Each one seemed to have a different size and spoke to me in a different voice. There was no context for what they said, so it was hard to follow. They mentioned something about gods. They spoke about 2 weaves, one called the Dark Weave. I was somehow part of this Dark Weave, and it surprised them. Unlike the other weave, they could not easily see the Dark Weave. Something about this Dark Weave being created by the curse of the Undying. Then there was something that they expected me to do, something to do with the time of prophecy, to find a child of some sort. At the end of the vision, they moved closer. There's probably supposed to be a comma there. Yep, comma. Nearly touching me. Then I woke up with a desire to travel east, to come to some city I never heard of. Freiburg? Philip seemed at a loss for words. He leaned back into his chair. A smile began to cross his face, which turned to a grin. Then he burst into laughter. Chris was taken aback. He looked over at Draven questioningly, who shrugged slightly in response. He turned back to Philip, whose laughter was subsiding. What's so funny? Comma. Philip sat up straight in his chair once again. Those laughed for joy and relief. It's finally time. After all the waiting, the death, the boredom, the planning, it's finally time, and I found you. You of all people, I never believed this would happen, but it did. I hoped and planned to be alive to see these times, but to find you a presage. 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 Oh my god, I need to look how to say that word again. Presage. In this Manasard world, it's more than I could have hoped for. Draven snapped his head in Philip's direction and spoke while Chris was trying to recover from the shock of Philip's unexpected and confusing response. Presage? After all this time, does this mean? Draven's voice trailed off. He couldn't even seem to dare to speculate out loud. Philip nodded excitedly, still smiling. It does, I'm certain of it. The time is nearly at hand. We have lived to see the end, and we will be able to influence the beginning. Christopher managed to regain his voice, speaking a bit more forcefully than he intended. What do you mean, Presage? What is it that you... What is that, and how do you mean I am it? And how do you know I am it? Ugh. What is that, and how do you know I am it? Do you understand all that gobbledygook that I heard? Gods, weaves, prophecies, it all sounds like nonsense. Talk to me, damn it. Philip's smile didn't falter at the intensity of Christopher's question. You are a presage, a herald of sorts. I've never met one, not even when I was mortal. They are rare, even when the flow of magic is in full force, and to find one, it's extraordinary. I'm going to make that an exclamation mark. There hasn't been one in countless ages. I've been waiting for you longer than you can imagine. You are a sign, or more precisely, you will be the sign that the prophecy is at hand. Christopher threw up his right hand, trying to pause the conversation. Wait a minute? Prophecy? Is that a real thing? Wait. They are talking about gods too? Are you saying gods are real? Philip chuckled slightly. Prophecy is real, but real prophecy is rare. Then there are different types of prophecy, and the way prophecy unfolds is complicated. For now, just know that prophecy is real. Comma? Yep. I forget commas a lot, apparently, according to Microsoft. And you are part of it. As the gods, they are real too. Oh yes, they are real. I've never met a true god, but they once walked the land. Some of their children still do if you know where to look. Philip paused, asking Chris, this must be a lot to take in. Chris nodded, so much so that I find it hard to believe. Prophecy? Sure, I can believe that. I am a vampire after all. The supernatural is real, so magic and prophecy, why not? But actual gods? Next you're going to tell me that the Christian god exists and religion isn't some sort of fraud. Chris looked over at Draven, who was quietly but intently watching the events unfold. Is he for real? At being addressed, Draven relaxed and sighed as he leaned back into his chair. He is. Gods are real. We have no idea if the Christian god is real, but it's possible. There are gods that are so old that their names have nearly been lost to time. There might even be some gods who have been lost to time. You are a presage, a title and power from an age long lost to time, an age only hinted at now in myth and legend. You thought your life was torn asunder when you returned. Now you're something that you can't even fathom. Something lost to the ages. Something that Philip was waiting for. Something I lost faith in. Something I thought would never come. Listen to Philip. He is better suited for this tale. It has been his reason to survive throughout the ages. Christopher looked from Draven to Philip. You speak in terms of ages. I know you're both old. Draven has chosen not to tell me how old, and I've come to respect that, but how old are you both? Christopher waited for what felt like an eternity. He felt lost like never before. How old was Draven? How old was Philip? Draven, more so than Philip, was obviously out of place in this time. That was disconcerting enough. Draven never mentioned his age. During their time, they had little contact with other vampires, but he got the feeling that Draven was older than many of the vampires he had met. I'm adding in a little bit about them killing vampires because it alludes to their backstory a little bit more. Because Draven and, to a lesser extent, Christopher have been hunting vampires, but for the Covenant, not the Covenant, oh my god, I forgot what I called it in this world. Maybe it was the Covenant. No. I want to say it was the Covenant. Anyways, for the vampire, for lack of a better word, government, Draven is kind of like a executor, and so he's training Christopher so Draven and Christopher would go around killing vampires that needed to be killed because they broke laws or, went out of bounds of the law, such. So anyways, yeah, I want to add in that a couple words to just have it in the story, I guess. During their time, they had a little contact with other vampires, other than to kill them. But he got the feeling that Draven was older than many of the vampires he had met. Although Draven did let something slip once about his past, something about the Covenant. Oh, yeah, I was right, it was the Covenant. Something about the Covenant, the agreement between the major vampire factions created in the 11th century. The birth of what might be best thought of as a vampire government. Draven once said something that made it seem like he was there at the founding of the government, making him at least 1,000 years old. Very old, but not the oldest living vampire he has heard of. But that was all he knew. Now he was sitting in front of two vampires he knew were over 1,000 years old, talking about magic, prophecy, and gods like it is an everyday occurrence. They're talking in terms of ages. What does that mean? Chris could only guess at what time meant to vampires of their age. What kind of perspective must they have on the history of humanity? What may have felt like an eternity was actually only a few moments before Philip spoke. Perhaps it will help if I unpack what has happened to you, but I can help put your experience in the context. Believe it or not, you told me about something I didn't know existed, the Darkweave. I will start with what I know for sure and end on speculation. That might take a while to explain. Please leave questions till the end of my tale. Christopher narrowed his eyes. Philip was still being evasive, and Christopher wasn't being much help, and Draven wasn't being of much help either. He asked a question. He thought it was time for answers, yet it sounded like he was going to have to wait a little while longer. He sighed and decided to lean back into the couch. Very well, continue. Philip paused a moment before continuing, organizing his thoughts. I think what you saw is the three fates. 3 should be capitalized. That is part of the title. You may know of what I speak of. They have been mentioned in human lore through the ages. They are real, and they are the caretakers, which I think is one word. Caretakers of the weave. From a modern perspective, you might say they are caretakers of the existence of linear time. Traditionally, they are seen as 3 women, a younger one, a middle-aged one, and an elderly one. They often deal in prophecy and making sure that time continues uninterrupted. They are not interested in deciding the fate of existence. I was thinking about adding a little bit there, but no, I think being concise is good. Despite Philip asking to not be interrupted, Chris spoke up and asked somewhat incredulously, "So the fates are gods? I met gods?" Philip let out a sigh of exasperation. No, they are not gods. They are said to have a divine spark, but they are something else, something more fundamental to the nature of existence. There is no word for what they are. They do speak to the gods, however. May I continue? Christopher shrugged in response, and Philip continued. Long ago, it was thought of a physical weave, but it might be best of in thoughts of terms of metaphor for linear time. In all the branches of the time... Oh my goodness! Thank you, It Be That Guy, for the follow. I appreciate it. Long ago, it was thought of as a physical weave, but it might be... Oh wow, hi Ian. I haven't talked to you for a very, very long time. Thanks for dropping in. Just working on a short story that I work on while I'm on stream, and only on stream, so it's all recorded. Yeah, good to see you too. Well, thank you. It's been pretty fun. I actually already finished one short story and published it on Amazon, like, earlier this year. I forget the exact time. This year's been crazy. Oh, you do? Yeah, stream? Yeah. But no writers? Yeah, the writing thing is pretty non-existent on Twitch. Like, I've looked and looked, but there's very few. There are definitely some, but it is not a big thing in the art streams. And I forgot to actually set that I was in an art stream. I think it still says just chatting. Genre, it's basically it's fantasy set in the modern age. I think this story specifically is set in 1996. It's part of a larger universe that I've been writing for years now. I actually haven't finished anything other than that other short story. I'm writing a series of novels in the setting right now. It's focused on vampires right now, but the first novel is vampires. Second novel in the series is same setting but something else. Yeah, actually, I've been working on this for a long time. I guess I would say over a year, over 10 years. And the original thought was it actually was a person in high school in Newburgh. And that would actually now end up being the third novel in the series if I ever get to finishing it. So, yes, a very similar timeline for our youth. Oh, speaking of high school, have you been back there since they covered it up? It's weird to go walk around in it. Did it at the high school reunion, 10-year high school reunion, like a decade ago. Oh yeah, yeah. Message me on Facebook. I'll send you the info. Oh, okay, yes, that it was a trip to walk through there, and like this used to be not covered, and then the incorporation of the other buildings and stuff. It was pretty cool. Knocking everything over. Oh yeah, the Newark School District. Yeah, are you talking about the banning of the flags? Is fucking ridiculous. Yeah, like I think it is ridiculous, but yeah, probably shouldn't go into it on stream. Man, the world right now. I used to like be an active participant in the world, participant in the world, and pay attention to everything. But it's just been so hard, especially in the last like 2 years. Like I thought the last like 4 years before that was hard, and then it just got worse. So yeah, it's just a lot of energy to pay attention to the world. I still hear about the bad things, and it frustrates me. Oh yeah, like I know I'm kind of in an echo chamber in my Facebook, and that's okay. I pay attention to things outside of Facebook, so I kind of know what's going on, but I freely admit that I'm in an echo chamber. Oh, thank you for the subscription. It'd be that guy, friend from high school. Man, have been paying a lot of attention to the Blizzard stuff, though. Because I guess the one thing I actually follow still is, like, computer and gaming news. And that's been big, and that's been terrible. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. Like, I stopped playing WoW, not for that reason, and then I was going to resubscribe, and then all that happened, was like, nah. And then the stuff that happened the last couple weeks, I just doubled down. Like, I even stopped playing, like, Diablo 2 Resurrected because of that, so they didn't get my monthly numbers. It's Yeah, it's ridiculous. I can't believe that exists. But I knew that the gaming industry had problems, but man. Oh, you interviewed there? And oh, yeah, I bet, yeah. Yeah, getting the other job. I can see that retrospect being better, yeah, for sure. So right now I'm just going through what I worked on last time and editing the pair or the scene. And then if there's still time in the stream, because and there will be, I'm going to continue writing, I guess. See, where was I? Oh, and continue talking. And so, like, if I just start reading, yeah, I like this series specifically. I write live. I don't do any other series live. I basically thought that I wanted to actually sit down and do some world building, and it's really hard to organize it for me, anyways, because I always just kind of spontaneously write more. But I realized the larger story is I need to actually sit down and work on some background stuff. And I was going to kind of do it like Tolkien and just never have it be shown to anyone. Kind of like the Silmarillion was never meant to be shown to anyone. And I figured, well, if my background work is going to be shown, why not organize it in such a way that it's actually entertaining? So instead of writing the background stuff more academically, I'm writing all of the background stuff in a series of short stories on stream. So, and I'm not saying that I'm going to get as deep as Lord of the Rings. That's for damn sure. I'm not going to have that like happen because I'm not doing other languages and stuff like that. And part of the reason I'm using the modern setting is because it's a lot easier to incorporate. A lot easier to. There's a lot less things to have to create from scratch if you use the modern world. I guess you could say. So I'm cheating a little bit. But at one point, there is actually, when I get into the second novel, it's going to talk about other worlds, and so there will be a fantasy-based world in the setting. Yeah, I guess the better way to say would be finding efficiencies. That is a much more positive way of saying it. That is very true. I did watch the first season of Magicians. I did like it. And I guess yeah, in a way, it's like that. Like you're a big gaming guy. You're in the gaming community or gamers club, so you know some of the references I'd probably be able to mention. Like I incorporated some of the ideas from Shadowrun, like magic returning, but also incorporating like that a dimension that is intercepting the human dimension when magic returns. So it's like a combination of both. Uh, yeah, but you'll see Vampire the Masquerade stuff in this for the vampire stuff, and I mean taking a lot of different sources that if you're hopefully I hide them well enough that you don't realize what they come from. But I mean, writing is all about taking ideas and changing them around and telling them in new and different ways. So that's what I'm attempting to do. Get rid of that Epic little thing there. Because I'm not sponsored by Epic. So yeah, this is just like background world building stuff. So sometimes I go into a big, like this scene is absurdly long and it's a lot of just one guy talking a lot, although it has some other people talking. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing on stream. All right, well, thanks for stopping by and thanks for the subscribing. I hope to talk to you later on Facebook. And have fun at work if you can. All right, I'm gonna take another drink of water really quick. I need to clean off my desk. Just knocking everything over. Christopher shrugged in response, and Philip continued. Long ago, it was thought of as a physical weave, but it might be best thought of in terms of metaphor for linear time and all the branches of time that can take place. Prophecies is where the lines of time can branch, and the actions of mortals can make a larger difference to how the future unfolds. Presage is a manifestation of a marker within this weave, a time of drastic change, where the weave is uncertain of how the future will come together. Okay, I wrote it right. Read it wrong. Where the weave is most vulnerable to the actions of mortals. Chris interrupted again, the frustration written plainly across his face. So, I'm not natural. I mean, I wasn't really a human before I was turned into a vampire. My whole life has been some predetermined plan. I never had a choice. Philip sighed, and he spoke with care rather than annoyance at being interrupted. You're always human, but you were also a Presage. I'm not going to say that I wasn't really... Oh. I'm also not sponsored by Writecraft Legends. I need to remember to turn this stuff off. I'm going to just say not normal. So I'm not normal? I mean, I wasn't really a human before I was turned into a vampire. My whole life has been some predetermined plan. I never had a choice. Philip sighed, and he spoke with care rather than annoyance at being interrupted. You're always human, but you are also a Presage. If you are speaking about free will, I'm sorry. No, from my understanding, your future was always limited in that regard. As a Presage, your birth and death have been predetermined. It was known in my time that the fates will help you alive. Oof. Okay. As a Presage, your birth and death have been predetermined. It was known in my time that the fates will keep you alive until you have announced the birth of the child who will be central to the prophecy. Your life and your purpose has been predetermined. However, you are able to make most of the choices about how your life unfolds. In that way, you have free will. Chris thought about what Philip was saying. It was hard to get his mind around, but he thought he was beginning to understand. Some of his rudimentary learning about philosophy was kicking in from when he was human. Then it sunk in. Philip said his birth and death were predetermined. Wait, my death is predetermined? What do you mean? Philip leaned back into the couch. He sighed as a frown crept across his face before he reluctantly continued. Yes, your death. The Presage is born for one reason and one reason only, and that is to announce a time of great change. Once they have done this, they die. No one knows why for certain. It's assumed that if they were to live, they would potentially wield a power unknown to the world. There is hope, though. It sounds like you are part of this dark weave the fates spoke about. I think it exists allowed you to become a vampire. Knowing... Oops. Wrong now. Or wrong no. Knowing now that you are a Presage, I'm surprised you were allowed to become a vampire. It rewrites what I know of what a Presage is. You may yet survive, but I admit the hope is small. Chris sat there in silence. He was being faced with his own mortality. His whole world view was shook, yet he didn't feel lost. Confused, but not lost. He didn't know how, but he knew what he must do. He must go east. He must find Freyberg. He must find the child. He thought to himself, I know what I must do. I want to do it. I want to leave right now. But why? What if I resist? If I don't follow what has become my innermost desire, will I live? Chris looked to Philip. What if I choose not to do it? What if I choose not to find this child of prophecy? Philip raised an eyebrow. I'm not sure. I'm not sure you have a choice. Presages were even rare when their existence was known. I'm not sure you have a choice, but the dark weave... Philip trailed off. momentarily in thought before he brought his attention back to the conversation and asked Chris, "Tell me again what they said about this dark weave. There may be some hope." Chris replayed the scene again in his head while he spoke. I believe they said the dark weave was created when the curse of the Undying was performed. They also said that it was the reason they couldn't find me. Philip thought a moment. I can only speculate, but that seems to mean that there is another version of how reality can unfold. One of that is populated with the undead. One that is unseen by the fates and therefore the gods. To my knowledge, there hasn't been a presage since the curse of the Undying was performed. You, I, Draven, all the living dead might not be taken into account in the weave. Who knows what that will mean for the future? You may yet live. I do not know. Chris's mind was not put at ease, but at least there was a grain of hope that he could hold on to. He wanted to ask so many more questions. What was the curse of the Undying? What did that have to do with him? He never thought that he would be able to get as much out of Philip as he had, even if he was finding it hard to believe. He decided he wouldn't ask about the curse or ask more about these weaves, but he was afraid Philip would cease being so open, so he decided to stay on track. So I may live, but it sounds like the chances are slim. Not as comforting as I'd like, but I'll take it. You keep referring to gods. They exist. What does that mean for religion? Philip smiled slightly. Oh yes, gods are religion. Gods are real. Well, religion is often used by them to facilitate their will, or at least they used to. It is theorized that since mana has dried up on this world, at least compared to long ago, the gods have been unable to exert much, if any, of their will. I don't really know. I have no idea which religion has a real god attached to it and which doesn't anymore. Some religions are descendants of old religions. Much of the truths about the gods have been muddled with human interpretations over the millennia. Do not know what this means for them as we move into the time of prophecy. As to the gods themselves, they have not walked the physical world in a long time, much longer than I've been alive, or so I believe. Still, the footprints can be seen even to this day if you know where to look. There are even children of the gods still walking the earth, but that has very little bearing on the present. Chris thought to himself, well, at least he doesn't seem like all-knowing about something. Oof. Let me reread that. Well, at least he doesn't seem all-knowing about something. Still gods? That's hard to believe. Then there is this prophecy. I always believed in free will. Now I'm being told that's not. Oof. You actually put the all in italicization. Alright. Then there is this prophecy. I've always believed in free will. Now I'm being told that prophecy is real. What if I choose not to fulfill my duty? Not go along with some archaic notion of prophecy? Chris looked to Philip. What is this prophecy that I'm announcing? What's it about? Maybe I don't want it to happen. Again, what if I don't do it? What if I don't do what I'm supposed to do? I need to add do in there. You say I don't have a choice, but do you really know? According to the fates, I shouldn't have been allowed to be a vampire. Maybe I could just not do what I'm told to do. Have you thought about that? Well, I left that at a really bad spot. I must have had to leave. Actually, I need to give this some more thought. So I know I said I was going to do some writing. I've done some editing, which is good. And it's been a couple weeks since I got back to it, so I didn't know I left it on such a cliffhanger, and I really need to think about this. Plus, I got a phone call earlier today about something that I need to get done today. So it's probably best that I stop here, but I will. Let me check my calendar. I hope nothing pops up like it has in the last couple weeks. make sure that I will be back next Tuesday. Oh, they changed the calendar on the update today. That's frustrating. I have a doctor's appointment next Tuesday at noon, and that was the only time I could get a doctor's appointment. I need to stream more. I will be streaming next week. I will make an announcement about what day. Probably be a Wednesday. It's better that I stream on an off day than not stream at all at this point. Thank you for everyone who has been listening and watching. Thanks to It Be That Guy for subscribing for a month. A new subscriber. It's wonderful. I love it. And thank you for tuning in today. Have a good rest of your day.